Good morning and welcome back to I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Tjong Faris. We are continuing, of course, a developing story in Brussels where two explosions were heard at the airport and another explosion about an hour and a half later at a local metro station. An unfolding story. We currently have two guests with us. First of all, Amir Oren, senior defense analyst from Haaretz Israeli Daily. Amir Oren, thank you for joining us again. What can you tell us regarding the latest information to have come out from Brussels?
Well, we don't have an official announcement by Daesh or by any other organization, but obviously it has the hallmarks of this organization. And because it takes place a few days after the sweep in Brussels, it has either the hallmark of a very swift response, which even a major country can hardly ever produce on such short notice, or a long-planned attack which only bore fruit, a very bitter fruit today, but was being hatched for many months, and it hit a very soft spot. The airport, the international airport, close to the NATO headquarters, a short ride from Brussels City, where a metro station was also hit. It goes to show you that the terrorist organizations know full well that transportation hubs, airports, metro stations, other places where people congregate, these are very vulnerable targets in which you can also shut down transportation as well as terrorize the population.
On that note of shutting down transportation, I mean, there was a report heard also that flights from Europe to Israel were canceled. Why would that be the case?
That would be the case because the original explosion took place in an American Airlines desk at the departure hall, according to reports. This would mean that the terrorists managed to find a way into the hall, and perhaps some of them managed to put their luggage on some flights, in which case these airplanes could either be blown up on the way from Brussels to wherever, including Tel Aviv, or that they would try to storm Tel Aviv airport the way Kozo Akamoto and his friends tried to do in May of 1972, killing almost 30 civilians.
Okay. Well, we also have another guest with us, of course, on the set. Mantel Qasim, what is your response to this?
Well, basically, this is a very dangerous situation now in Brussels, the de facto European Union capital. This tells you that there are sleeping cells in Europe, that the European intelligence has not been able to capture or at least find any leads into to them. This happens just 2 days after Saleh Abdeslam was arrested. This could be either a revenge attack on Belgium, because the arrest took place in Belgium, or it could be a planned attack that has been in the making for quite some time. Either scenarios is very worrying and dangerous to Europe and the international community. If it has been in the planning for some time, the European intelligence and the Belgian intelligence hasn't been able to find out about it. And if it's a revenge attack, that's also worrying, because that tells you, as Oren said, the capability of these groups to react quickly to such arrest of their main members. So this is a very worrying news to take place in such an important public arena. It's the airport. Thousands of people were traveling from Brussels to the rest of the world. Took place near an American Airlines desk, which gives it even that much more publicity. So this is a very, in terms of this extremist group, this has been so far, if it's their attack, it's been successful for them, because it's basically done as much terror as possible.
Now, you talk about sleeping terror cells in Europe. Of course, I mean, from an Israeli perspective, Israel has known about there being sleeping terror cells, not necessarily related to Islamic State, but related to other regimes or other authorities, if you want, that are anti-Israel. Would you say that this attack might be related to Islamic State based on what we know so far?
Well, it has all the hallmarks, as Oren also said, all hallmark and fingerprints of the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda. And if I was a betting man, I probably say that this is ISIS is responsible for it because of what we have seen. We follow these attacks and we follow the pattern, and basically this has all the hallmark and fingerprints of ISIS. Now, this isn't really news to the Belgium authorities. Just yesterday, the Interior Minister said that we know that the risk is high and we are being vigilant and looking around for such attacks. So the European intelligence community is well aware that there are probably attacks to take place. But I don't think that they were expecting such an attack to take place in Brussels, in the de facto capital of the European Union, just 2 days after the arrest of Saleh Abdeslam.
A couple of years ago, there was an attack on an Israeli couple at the entrance to the Jewish Museum in Brussels. Now, the Daesh and the other organizations do not necessarily have a chain of command whereby the leader passes down certain precise commands, do this, do that, at a certain date, a certain place. Members or people who identify themselves with the spirit of the organization can meet with each other. Sometimes they are members of the same family or the same clan. Mm-hmm. They grew up together, and they say to each other, hey, let's do something which will be in the spirit of Daesh, so you wouldn't find about it in advance. Now, the Western European countries are living in denial, have been living in denial at least until the migrants started to hit home. But only a few days ago, President Obama, in an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, in setting out the so-called Obama doctrine, lashed out at what he called free riders. He meant the countries of Western Europe and others, including Saudi Arabia, who do not put in their equal share. This could be in defense budgets, but also in boots on the ground. And if the Belgians think that they can stay out of the fight against Daesh in Iraq and in Syria and elsewhere and only be hit at home, this cannot go on for much longer.
We just got in a report saying that the flights have been resumed, actually, to Tel Aviv. But on the earlier comment that you made, you said there's no precise command when it comes to Islamic State, to Daesh. We have seen a lot of different attacks, so to speak, lone wolf attacks, people who associate with the theory, Bonagit, of Daesh. Would you say that that is the strength of the terror organization?
Daesh has a very extensive infrastructure. It means that there are many members with cell phones, with access to explosives and whatever, but they are waiting for the right moment to act. It doesn't mean that it's like a military unit being sent from a base with some orders and then being extricated back home. People are on their own. They know the general spirit, the so-called commander's intent, hit at the Belgian institutions, Belgian population, European institutions. They don't need to be told, okay, go to the airport on Tuesday morning.
Well, as sophisticated as these groups are, they're very simple. They give their members and their loyalists a basically wide information, wide instructions, general instructions. Basically, if we get hit, if we need to take revenge, here are the areas where you need to go. These cells around the world. And by the way, Daesh, or the Islamic State, is the upgraded version of Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda basically operated in a very simple way, as sophisticated as it may sound. Basically, it has cells throughout the world, and they know what they need to do. They don't need to go back to the main headquarters where they need to report about their findings and what's the next step. They have the freedom and the authority to operate on their own, as long as they stay within the ideological beliefs and theories of these groups. So ISIS members, they've been trained and working together in Syria as well as in Iraq. Now they're back either with refugees, or let's not also kid ourselves. Many of these attackers or these members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but mainly ISIS now in Europe, they are European citizens. They carry European passports, European Union passports. So coming back, they don't necessarily need to be part of a group, or the refugees groups. They can go back as citizens going back to their country. countries. That's all they have to do. And they have, like I said, basic and general instructions that they need to act according to what the Islamic State ideology states.
Some people on the far right have, for a long time, spoken of Europe essentially being a ticking bomb, a pressure cooker, so to speak, where you have small factions of people that they've let in over decades, who are fertile ground, so to speak, for these terrorist organizations. Would you say that this is a massive war, or a broad war on Europe itself, on European principles?
Well, even if it is factually correct, it is unfair, because these people are as European as any other. There is no place for racial or religious profiling. And in earlier periods, you had the Baader-Meinhof gang and the Red Brigades. And historically speaking, just because President Obama is in Cuba today, it's interesting to note that it all started with the hijacked planes from Cuba to Florida in the early 60s, which then transformed itself into the Palestinian hijackings of planes, or when they couldn't hijack planes, attacking airports at Munich, at Athens, at Tel Aviv. And then you had Al-Qaeda with 9/11. This whole idea of air transport being perhaps the weakest link in the infrastructure of modern life started with this relatively innocent flights out of Cuba, and with technology being what it is, communications, explosives, the fact that people can encrypt their communications so that governments cannot find out what they are talking about.
But it's not only unfair, as you said, but it's also unjust and it's racist to accuse, or to at least say that all these communities within Europe that are essentially Europeans, they immigrated to Europe and they became citizens of Europe, and we cannot hold the acts of few and blame the majority for it. And we all know that there is a fraction of each and every society that basically is blaming the migrants for it.
No.
And maybe Europe and others, like many have said, should blame its own political policy towards certain regimes and certain areas for what is happening. So there are many theories to why these things are happening.
There's a lot more we can say about this, but we actually have someone on the line, Bojan Panchevsky, who is currently at the metro station in Malbec. Bojan, what can you tell us? What can you report from the area of the latest explosion?
Well, it seems like a bomb went off at the station or on a train that was stopped at the station. It's not clear yet. The likely target would have been the next station, Schuman, where the headquarters of the European Union is. All the European institutions are there around the square. And it looks like many people have been injured. There were some reports of casualties, of deaths as well. I don't know about that, but I saw about 12 ambulances rushing to the scene. A bomb squad has arrived. A lot of people are being treated on the street. They're lying down. Paramedics are attending to them. So it's basically a general mayhem, and the air smells of some corrosive plastic smell from the explosion. So it's pretty bad. This is the center of Brussels. As I said, these are the European institutions where EU leaders meet almost every week.
Now, the subway system had been closed down, and we saw also pictures of people essentially walking out of the metro, walking down the rails. What do you imagine the authorities might do in order to bring things to a normal situation?
Well, the authorities already shut down partially the transport system in Brussels. They declared the highest state of emergency across the country. So I think they are trying to get a grip on the situation. Obviously, this was a case of multiple attacks. So far, we know of 3 explosions, 2 at the airport and 1 at the metro station here. It's not clear who perpetrated this and what is actually happening, but I think the authorities, there's enormous police presence everywhere. The traffic congestion is terrible. All the roads are closed. There is army and police everywhere. So,
of course, the metro attack happened after the airport attack. There weren't necessarily any warnings before. Have there been warnings? Is there any kind of alert in terms of there being further attacks? No one's been caught so far.
No, that I've heard of. I don't think anyone can tell for sure at the moment what's happening. But there was a warning issued not to use the public transport. The metro was shut down. I think the tram lines are shut down. Buses are still running, from what I can tell. But some of the many roads are closed in the center.